Welcome to our science seminar for today. I bet all of you are happy about your textbooks and how cheap they are. You have no interest in finding cheaper textbooks or better textbooks. That's what we're going to talk about today. We have with us Thomas W. Judson from Austin University. He has a doctorate in mathematics and statistics from the University of Oregon. He also has a master's degree in mathematics from the University of Oregon. And he has his bachelor's degree in, what do you think? Mathematics from, not the University of Oregon this time, but from the University of Illinois. Okay. And he's been a professor at places like University of Portland and at Harvard. And now he is at Boston University, and his big projects involve open source textbooks for things in math and other places. So this is a real changing sort of thing, open source books. Yes, they change every year, and the potentials grow all the time, and certainly something that we at Letourneau are looking into, and we're very happy that Dr. Judson is here today with us to talk more about this. Let's give him a warm greeting.
Wow, a lot of students. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to talk about open source textbooks today, and there's going to be a little bit about abstract algebra, a little bit about SAGE, and a lot about something called pretext. So I just want to start out with a story, okay? I had an abstract algebra textbook, and it was published by, looked like this. Okay, and I'll pass it around, but please get these back to me at the end. Okay, it was published by PWS in 1994. Okay, there was a second edition, second printing, but no second edition. You know, when I wrote that textbook, I think it sold for about $50. I made $15 a copy, so I figured maybe I made $3,000 or $4,000 off of it, and I was working for 50 cents an hour. So after PWS merged with Brooks Cole, which is now Cengage, there's been a huge number of mergers in the publishing business. My book went out of print, and that happened to not just me, but there were a lot of people, and there's big stories behind that, but that's another talk or conversation over coffee or something. So I finally got the copyright back in 1997, and it just sat idle till about 2008. So about 2008, okay, what happened was, okay, yeah, same slide. So yeah, okay, now we're here. Okay, so about 2008, a longtime colleague of mine from University of Puget Sound, Rob Beezer, he began to write an open source linear algebra textbook called A First Course in Linear Algebra, and that was started as an experiment about 10 years ago, and he decided, unlike my book, he was going to make that open source from day one. So he is the one of the leading open source advocates. Okay, and he released this book in 2004, and then there was an online version in 2008. So Rob kept telling me, Tom, you got to make your book open source. Okay, and I was thinking, well, you know, I'm going to miss all that 50 cents an hour, you know, money and those huge royalty checks. And, you know, let me try and get somebody to publish it. And finally I just went, look, it's not worth it. I need to do something that's right for the community. And so he talked me into making it open source, so it became open source in 2008, and finally, okay, we released a full text version in 2009. Okay, so the first hard copy of the open source textbook looked like this. Okay, and I even have the invoice in here. You can look at it on how much this cost. Okay, and I'm not making any money off of this. This was published by somebody else. Okay, so an open source textbook, what is it? It's not just free. Okay, it's an open source. If I write an open source textbook, I keep the copyright. Okay, but I agree to make it publicly available. And that means you get it as students for free, faculty get it as students for free, but, okay, they can also take my book and modify it, okay, as long as they say that it's my book and it's where they got it from, and they make it publicly available. Okay, and under certain licenses, Cengage or Pearson or, any publisher can take my open source textbook, publish it, and charge $200 for it. Okay, but you guys aren't stupid. If you see it out there on the web for free or for $25, they're not going to make much money. Okay, so with a copyright, you get copyright for everything you create. Okay, so you get a lifetime monopoly on the book. Okay, under this license. Okay, you control copies of the work. Okay, I get lifetime plus 70 years. Okay, and then I open a license grants additional rights to users. Okay, so what is an open license? Very last one, it's very different from free to download. Okay, if I made my book free to download, you can download it, read it for free, but you can't do anything with it. So open license says you can copy the book, you can distribute it, okay, you can modify it if you don't like what a problem is or something like that, okay, you can modify the open source and make it freely available. You can, an example, we could do a Creative Commons license, and the best place to find out or to do free document licenses, go to Wikipedia, okay, and see what the license actually grants. Okay, so why should you do open source as an author? Well, and why should you want open source as a student? Well, first of all, it's free, okay? But there are other reasons too. So the best book you write for your courses is the book you write. So I don't have to publish my book, okay, every 2 years because it's going out of print and there's too many used books around and I need to make money, and so I'm freed from market forces. But if I want, I can publish a book, and again, you can pass that around every couple of years. And so an open source is available at zero or low cost, okay? So they're widely available now. They can support interactive versions. So you can have an open source textbook, and this book that you're looking at here that I'm passing around is available online, and it's the same book online, except there are some live cells. And it's wide participation, and it's also easy to maintain. Has anybody ever found an error in their textbook? Okay. What happened? Nothing? Did you tell your teacher and nothing happened? The author finds out about it and gets corrected 2 years later. Okay. On the other hand, if I'm an open source textbook, if you send me an email, I can correct it right on the spot. And now that version won't be corrected until next year, but the online version can be corrected the same day. Now, this is a mature enough book that there are very few errors, okay, but people keep finding them. Okay, so the book has been very successful. One of the things as a faculty member, you know that you have to publish, okay, and if you have to publish to keep your job or get promoted, you know, maybe the administration is going to say that, well, an open source book, because you didn't have to go through a publisher, okay, it's not worth as much as another textbook. And now we can argue against that, and I'm going to pass these back too. So these are different editions, one each year. The latest one is the purple one, just pass them around. Okay, now I know I've documented over 50 adoptions, and that I quit counting in 2014. Now I'm sure I've got several hundred. Okay, and if you Google, okay, abstract algebra textbook, guess where this one comes up? Comes up usually as the first one or two. If you make the first page in Google, you're set for life. Okay, it's very hard to get kicked off, but sometimes it's hard to get there too. And you know, I was at a meeting in Atlanta in January, and somebody comes up to me and goes, "Are you the Tom Judson?" Well, I guess according to my mother, I am. And then when you really know that you've made it, you go, Siri, abstract algebra textbook.
Here's what I found on the web for open abstract algebra textbook.
Okay, so Siri even knows about you, and I hate Google, but okay. So, you know, the faculty issue is I will put that up against any published book, and I think I can back up that this is successful. Okay. So zero low cost. Well, if you look at my book, okay, commercially available textbooks are available are expensive. Two of the other leading abstract algebra textbooks are almost $200. The latest is 2017 edition of my book, sold for $26, and that's not published by me, it's published by Orthogonal Publishing, and they just grabbed the source files. We worked with them, but originally I didn't know that. But they could do that under the open license. Okay, that was perfectly fine. And what they do is they go through Amazon or Barnes & Noble online, and it's on-demand printing, so if you order something from Amazon, you'll get it in a couple of days, and we do it every year. And the funny story was that that first edition, which if you looked in there, the cost was about $20, and we were at a meeting in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the Clay Institute for Mathematics, and William Stein, who was the founder of SAGE, we passed it around the room, and William, look at how much the book costs. He opens this, $20, we're getting ripped off. Okay, so it's very, very easy. It's cheap to do. Okay, it makes stuff easier for the faculty. Okay, and much, much less of a burden on the students. And I don't think there are any penalties anymore. If you have a good open source textbook, it counts as much as a published textbook, maybe even more. Okay, so availability. So with open source, you can make things available on the internet. So if you look on the internet and you Google abstract algebra book, or you get Siri to find it for you, and you click on the online version, you will get the same exact version. Okay, there's nothing different in the printing. And there are a few additions that I can do online, okay, because I can do links and stuff that I can't do in print easily. Although we think we can put little scan codes on the side that you can hold your iPhone up to and get internet access. Okay, so we can do print versions, EPUB versions, PDF versions. You could read it on paper. You could read it on desktop, laptop. You could read it on a tablet. And the way we've got it set up now is I don't recommend reading textbooks on your iPhone, but I've been very unsuccessful at my students doing that. Okay, it will come up formatted for your iPhone. Okay, and if you looked at things that get formatted specifically for tablets and iPhones, web pages, it's a little bit different. Okay, and so we've tackled that problem. And commercial publishers can't do the same thing because they have to worry about digital management rights. They have to make sure they're getting their money. Yes?
I got a question. I mean, this is a very nice binding, and the print is very good. Publishers claim that the biggest cost of producing a nice textbook like this is not the author royalties anyway. It's the time and trouble it takes to make a nice printed version like this. So why is the cost of this so much less?
I don't know. I don't believe the publishers. Now, I can understand if they have to maintain inventories. Okay, then it's expensive to maintain inventories. But to produce it on demand, it's not that expensive. I've never had any problems with the binding on these books. My students tend to destroy them, but they destroy a lot of things. Are we going to have any other questions? Okay, so just to give you an idea how popular this is, I grabbed the statistics off from this past week, and so just for the online version, I'm getting 3,000 page loads, and I get first-time visits, almost 1,000. I've got a Facebook page for it, but I never post anything on it, but I always get these likes from India, okay, which is amazing. Then I get likes from other places and so on. So, okay, so now, with an interactive online version, there's a lot you can do. You can put GeoGebra. Anybody know about GeoGebra? Okay. It's an online geometry package. We've done that. Interactive graphs. WebWork is an online homework system. You can incorporate that into the book. Sculpt, which is an in-browser Python. I haven't done much with that. Sage Cell, okay, we can actually put live Sage cells and R in the book, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. Anybody know what R is? It's the open source statistics language. Okay, so statisticians love R. Okay, and with Sage cells, it makes the learning curve very much less steep. And audio and video players, so if you want to embed a video, and I've done this in books, you can do that. And you can do typeset mathematics very easily, and if you typeset mathematics, you can do a lot of things, because that's a complicated problem. Okay, so they can be collaborative. Okay, so we learned a lot in writing open source textbooks from software engineers. You can use version control through software revision control systems such as Git or Mercurial. We can do modular designs, okay, and in the online version of my book, okay, there are a bunch of SAGE exercises. SAGE is an open source computer algebra system founded by William Stein, but Rob Beezer wrote the SAGE exercises. And we can release every year, okay. It costs me no extra money to have these editions, and notice there's one every year. I think we're missing a year someplace. And I can put snapshots up, okay, of my book. If I correct errors or something halfway through the year, I can keep a working copy where students and faculty can go look and see if there's an error. And so you can continuously improve the book and make it available. You can't do that with a published book. And it doesn't go out of print. Okay. Maintenance is easier. Okay, so every reader is a copy editor. Students are the greatest copy editors in the world. Okay, so Rob Beezer, for his linear algebra book, started paying students for errors. And first it was 25 cents an error. Okay, that found a lot of errors. And then his errors got scarcer, the price went up. And I think he's up to $50. And I think last year he had to pay out $250. Okay, so I'm also writing an open source ordinary differential equations book, and I thought, oh, this is a good idea. So I set aside $50 and I started paying $1 an error. Okay, and students loved it. And I loved it because I found the errors. So typos, you can fix them very quickly. Okay, so now where do you find digital textbooks? So some of them can be online, so let's see if this works. So there's a PDF version of my book right there. And it's the exact same book you're holding in your hands. And let's see if I can get back. And this may be a little bit complicated. Okay, so, and, okay, publishers now offer a lot of books as an ebook, right? And it's the same book as your hardbound copy. But there's a huge production issue because if you've got a book that's online and a print book, you have to sit down and rewrite the entire online book. You know, how do you conquer that? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Okay, so, and if I go to the online version, and they have to be password protected, you still have to pay a lot of money for them. Okay, if you've got an app in your book, if it's not an open source app, you're going to have to work out some sort of deal, maybe with Wolfram or somebody else, or a statistics company or software company. It's not going to come for free, and that student gets passed on. That cost gets passed on to the students. Okay. With the abstract algebra book, let me show you what that looks like online. All right, so it'll look something like this, and it's the exact same book. So I can go down and I can get links. So let's just go down to something like permutation groups, dihedral groups, okay, and I'm not so concerned about the mathematics, more the format of the book. So it's got some pictures there, a statement, and I can do things like have a theorem, and then we've got these things, collapsible things called nulls, so I can expand the proof or I can hide it. Okay, I've got hyperlinks. Well, what's figure 5.21? Well, I can open it right there. Okay, it makes it very easy to read. So lots of possibilities, okay, with online textbooks. Oh, and one other thing too, okay, we can embed Sage in the book. So Sage is a computer algebra system. So if I type in something like and I got to spell it right. Anybody know what how I compute the factorial of 34? What is it? So you take 34, you multiply it with every integer below 34, and it comes out usually to be a pretty big number. Okay. This gets sent off to a remote server that's open access. Okay, and so let's see if it comes back. And there's the number. Okay. And I could embed graphs, I could do a whole bunch of things like this in the textbook, okay, so this is a revolution in textbook, okay. I can embed R cells in the textbook, okay, which lowers the learning curve quite a bit. Now let's see if I can get back to where we were before. Okay, so how did we do this? Well, we were very fortunate enough to get a grant from the National Science Foundation, and it was called UTMOS. It was undergraduate teaching of mathematics with open source software and textbooks. I forgot who came up with the name, but there were several of us on the first grant, and we were very lucky the first time out. Usually you have to try several times with this. We got a grant for $500,000 from the National Science Foundation. And so Rob Beezer at University of Puget Sound, Jason Grout, who was at Drake University and left academia to make big dollars on Wall Street, was on the grant. And Kieran Kedlea, anybody ever take the Putnam exam? You know what it is? Kieran is the one who posts the solutions to the Putnam exam. Okay. Susan Linds was our evaluator, William Stein was the founder of SAGE, myself, and then everybody at the American Institute of Mathematics helped us out, and they really made it possible. So, and then last year, okay, about a year ago, we finally got our second grant. The first one was easy to get, okay. We had to try 3 times to get the second one. And we got $700,000 for 2 years, and there's a few other people, Vilma Mesa at University of Michigan, who's a math ed researcher. So now this grant is more about how students and faculty use textbooks, okay, and it's less about SAGE and more about textbooks and how we can make textbooks better. Okay, so one of the tools that has made this possible is something called pretext. Okay, originally it was called MathBook XML, and XML is a markup language that has been around for a long time. And if you write your textbook in pretext, you only have to maintain one source. So I write everything in pretext, and then I run it through a script, and what happens is the online version gets produced, the PDF version gets produced, the print version gets produced, okay. So now, okay, if I have to correct an error, somebody tells me an error or I want to change something, I don't have to go back and change the online version, I don't have to go back and change the print version, the PDF version, or what other versions, the EPUB version. I just change the pretext version and I generate everything new again. Okay, which makes things very, very reasonable. And the abstract algebra book was the first book to be written in pretext. And there's about 20, 25 books out there now that are written in pretext. So we're doing multiple formats from a single source. So this frees an author from presentation technical details. You write once, you read anywhere. Multiple formats are easy to produce from one source. It's designed to be easy to use. And I'll show you some examples. And for math, we used something that mathematicians use called LaTeX, but that's for math and math only. Okay? So how does a pretext example work? Okay, well, here's a command that you just write, and migrate novel, okay, the title chapter of the first one is The White Whale, call me Ishmael. Okay, I guess somebody already wrote that book, so I can't write it. But, you know, once you got in, and the P signs are very like HTML code, like once you get in there, you just start writing, okay? And so it's not very hard, it's very structured, and of course, you know, if you forget to put you know, if you have a begin chapter, if you forget to put an end chapter, something's going to complain down the line. Okay, so, you know, what you do is you write a little bit, okay, then you run it through the script to make sure you haven't made any mistakes, okay, and you write a little bit more, okay. You don't write the entire novel, run it through the script and say, oh, it doesn't work. Okay, but it doesn't take, but, you know, just a little bit to run it through the script. Okay, so what about the math? Okay, so this is about going to be the only math that I do in here. Okay, so we would have, if you see the angle brackets M or the angle brackets ME, that displays math equations, and inside those brackets is LaTeX commands. And you know, now my students are starting to learn LaTeX, okay, and it's possible since we have things like CodeCalc, Overleaf, and Share LaTeX where they don't have to install it and make it work on their own computer. It becomes much more reasonable to learn. Okay, so we can actually incorporate Sage or R. Okay, so if I put Sage in the book, okay, and I just put a begin Sage in Sage, put a command, Sage command there, it's going to return a live Sage cell that will integrate that. So let me show you how this works. Okay, so it integrated it. So suppose now that you don't like that and you want to do something much more complicated. That you want x to the 40th power, no reasonable person would try and do this by hand, I think. But Sage can do it, okay? And, you know, this is what computer algebra systems are for. And also, people will make mistakes. And I put it, let's see, stick a couple of unmatched parentheses in there. Okay, and if you're learning any computer language or command language for the first time, or if you're trying to learn Sage just in a Sage environment, okay, this can drive you nuts finding a mistake. So you get an error, and Sage errors tend to be cryptic. Everybody will say that, they're working on it. Okay, didn't like it. Oh, so now what do I do? Well, if I'm working in a system, I have to go back and find the error, okay? However, since you're in a Sage cell, you just go back up and reload the page and get a do-over. That's pretty cool. Okay, so if you're a mathematician, there's a lot of LaTeX documents around. You know, if you have a nice book, you want to get it into pretext, and you go, but I've got to go through all that work to recode it and get it over into pretext. And that's what I had to do with the abstract algebra book, and it took about a year. Well, David Farmer at American Institute of Mathematics now has a script that will take your LaTeX and shoot it right over to pretext and generate a HTML version right away. Okay, so it's all automatic now, it's automated. And that's assuming that you write clean LaTeX. And I'm not going to go do this example, but the slides are available online, and you can check the example if you want to see how that works, the types of stuff you can produce. So the current state of affairs for my book is that the print and hard copy, we put out a yearly edition, and I just give the files. Rob Beezer helps me. We get the files to Lon Mitchell, who has this small publishing company called Orthogonal Publishing, and then he converts the files, sends them off to Amazon. Amazon does print on demand, and I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so I can get a hard copy, quite easily. Yeah, those books that you're passing around. Okay, I bought all those. I didn't get them for free. Okay, so I paid the same as my students would. Available is, you can get them Sage Worksheet, Sage Math Cloud, which is now CoCalc online, PDF, Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, all those are, different types of formats. Okay, I'm still working on the instructor's manual because I had to take it from LaTeX over to pretext, and it's a job. And there need to be some corrections done in there. But those solutions manual is not open source. Okay, so what are we doing now in the grant? Okay, so we're continuing to develop pretext, and we're able the tools so you can publish quickly and easily in different formats. Rob Beezer and Alex Jordan are integrating WebWork, which is MAA's online homework system, right into pretext. And I'll give you an example of, the homework system. If I can get this to load. Yeah. So we'll stay on this page for a second. Okay, so sample article online. I've got to find this. Yeah. So WebWork sample sample. So I can go down here and you can do your online homework right in the textbook. You don't have to load up a separate program. Okay, so we're still working on this, but you can preview, submit an answer, show the correct answer. Okay, which is a really nice thing to do. Okay, so one of the other things that I want to show you is the gallery. That's how the number of open source textbooks that we have right now. So there's linear algebra, there's abstract algebra, it goes down to college algebra, and calculus, of course, discrete mathematics, and it's not all math, some of it's computer science, okay, and we've even got a chemistry book up there, okay, it's quantum chemistry. We've got a physics, okay, humanities, okay, and one's music theory for the 21st century, okay, and I'll show you some other stuff that you could do in just a minute. So a lot of this is done through, I want to mention the AIM this is going to drive me nuts here, sorry. Okay, so a lot of this is through AIM's open textbook initiative. Okay, so if you're a mathematician or you get the opportunity to go to national meetings, you can always drop by the AIM booth. And we work closely with Sage and CoCalc, okay, and we're finally investigating how students and faculty actually use their textbooks. We can even, okay, spy on you and be Big Brother, and if you're using an online textbook, now, we have, students all know this, okay, we can't do it without their consent, but we can generate a heat map of how students are using their textbooks and see exactly what the usage is down to the day and the hour, okay, and you can look at the heat map. Oh yeah, that's when the exams are. Okay. Now, what we can't look at is if you open your online textbook, okay, have it over here and start watching Game of Thrones or something. Okay, I can't tell that you're reading your textbook, but I can tell you opened it. Okay. So I've sent you to the pretext website. Okay, there's a Google Groups discussion on pretext. CoCalc is always useful. That's Sage Math Cloud, which is the online version of Sage. And my website is up here. And I want to show you one more thing. If you go to the American Institute of Mathematics, they have an open source textbook initiative, which is actually part of our grant. Okay, and they have lots of math textbooks that are open source and freely available to students and faculty. So, okay, we can look at, let's look at liberal arts. Okay, so we've got Math and Society, Mathematical Discovery, and these have to be approved by the editorial board, so I can't just write some book, send it off to American Institute of Mathematics, and they're going to post it up here, okay? There are some criteria, very strict criteria to getting on this list. My abstract algebra book is on there. My ordinary differential equations book, which is preliminary, is not on there yet, and it shouldn't be. Not enough people have used it. Sorry to keep going back and through this. So I want to show you one example, but I'm going to thank you for listening, okay, for a moment. And that's how to get in touch with me, but if you just Google my last name, Judson, Stephen F. Austin, you'll find me. And this talk actually is posted on my website. So the one last example I want to show is this book here. So this is a book on music theory. So it's not limited to the sciences and math. Okay, pretext. Okay, it was originally started out with math book XML, but we decided, well, it's more useful than math. And Jeremy Reisner, who is finishing up at University of Puget Sound, actually wrote this on a grant from the university. And let's see. Yeah. So can we get sound on this?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's give it a shot. Which I thought was pretty cool. And originally we had a Beatles song up there, but they made us take it down because of copyright issues. So that leaves us about 8 minutes for questions.
Yeah. Questions for our speaker today?
Yes.
I want to ask you a question. We use some open source materials here at Laterno. I know for university physics we use There's Lon Kappa, which is a homework program, it's open source. And then I think our general physics courses, they use open source. I'd love to use open source for university physics and for other classes here. I'm sure these students would prefer the cost reduction of using an open source material, but up until now, the big deterrent has been, I want to see a good quality version in the hands of the students. And if the best abstract algebra book is open source, then great. But if the best university physics book available is not open source, then I hesitate to just select an open source just because it's cheaper. When do you think we're going to see the day when?
I think you're starting to see it already, and it's certainly making its way in math, where open source books are competitive. We don't, in my courses, not every course I teach, I select an open source book, okay? But, given two books, okay, of equal quality, I'm gonna go with open source every time. The place to look is University of Minnesota Open Source Library. They're getting some funding and starting to collect some things. The Gates Foundation either has or is expecting to put an awful lot of money into this. And so I think you're going to see materials become available and write your own.
Stephen, at Austin, what fraction of the courses there use open source materials as opposed to?
I would say it's small. Okay, I would say it's very small. I'm trying to change that. I got them to change it to college algebra this semester, this year. People seem to be pretty happy with the quality. And a lot of books that they've done on print, where they've had some quality control, they've been excellent books, okay, they're getting converted to open source, and the authors are just saying, well, let's put them up and make them open source. And so I would look for those types of books. You find an out-of-print book that you like. Yes?
You mentioned people could make changes. So in your algebra book, what if somebody decided 1 + 1 = 3? I mean, do you have creative control?
No.
So.
Okay, if you decided that you want to take my algebra book, add your name to it, publish, and say 1 + 1 is 3, okay, and that was one of my huge worries, okay, and make that publicly available, you could do that. You would be found out very quickly, and it hasn't happened a lot. It hasn't been a worry. People just don't want to go to the effort.
Well, that was the thing too, is you said that they had to keep your name, I thought, as the public.
Yeah, but they also have to add their name.
Okay.
Okay, so they're not just saying, changing the book and saying that I changed the book, so you would rewrite, say 1 + 1 is 3,
Right.
then you have to say that your name to it, and then you got the original stuff from me, and they're gonna go back and look at my book and figure things out.
Okay.
And again, that hasn't been an issue. Yes?
You had mentioned that open source books, as far as quality, were becoming much more competitive. What would be a driving factor as an author to make a much higher quality open source textbook?
I want to write a good book. I don't want my name on garbage out there. It's not worth my time and effort.
What would be, if say you've written, the best university physics textbook out there, what would be a driving factor for you to make that an open source textbook?
Okay, so there's a calculus book out there written by James Stewart, who's now passed away, who's very successful, made a lot of money, okay? Now, I'm not saying I couldn't be bought, okay, but, for me to work for 50 cents an hour or, $10 an hour, that's not why we do these things, okay? So the driving factor would be to serve the community now that I can get credit for it, at my university. That would be another driving factor, so I can add this to my curriculum vitae and say I have published this textbook and somebody says it's open source. It's not worth as much. I could say, go ask Siri. And that's a pretty strong argument where we didn't have that argument 10 years ago. So it's worth it. It helps to get grants, okay? So in these two grants, I've probably made more off my open source textbook, or the fact that I've written an open source textbook, than I originally made when it was published, you know, under a commercial publisher. So there's a lot of good faculty out there who want to do it because they think it's the right thing to do. And, you know, your faculty, if they could find a good open source textbook that's equal with a commercial textbook, they're probably going to do you a favor and select that book. But it's up to you as students to educate them, say, you know, try and find an open source textbook, but I understand if you can't find one, but, you know, if you at least look.
You know, one last question, maybe if nobody else has one, is what about ancillary material? Professors like all those PowerPoints and test banks.
That's happening, and I think the first thing you see with that is the integration of web work. Okay, and if you can get an online system in there with web work, but the open source community is starting to get bigger and bigger. The free tech community is starting to get bigger and bigger. You know, we may try and write that into our next grant, okay, and with authors workshops. So, you know, we need to move in that direction. But, you know, open source, you can add some of that on your own, and we can change pretext to allow for that. So I think that's happening.
Right. Well, if you want to learn more about this, you can come join us for lunch. We'll be in the choice room called the Corner Cafe. And let's thank our speaker one more time.
Okay, if you've got the books, if you could please return them to me up here. I can't replace them.